welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. It is a cold and biting, and certainly in London, very wet February. Here, Christmas is a distant memory. The beautiful holiday season is a distant memory, but it's the coarse winter of 2026. What better time to endure? What better way to endure the winter than with some top-notch hard-boiled noir? And I have a treat for you. I have the three biggest names in hard-boiled noir. Max Allan Collins, right here. How are you, mate?
I'm good. It's cold here. It's not wet. Not wet
Yeah.
at all. We're in
It's
Iowa.
Well, yeah, I know you get it cold, mate, but
Yeah.
this is England. The reality is we get it cold, but never that really deep icy cold you get where you are because of the Gulf Stream and everything. But what we do get is miserable grey skies and permanent rain.
Yeah, this is the cars in the garage every
Yeah,
time you go out and come back
I
in this
believe it,
weather.
mate.
This
I
is
believe it.
this is rough.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I've got a woman to shovel the walks for me.
And no finer woman. Let's face it.
She's the greatest. My
She's
wife
the
Barb is
best.
who we're talking about.
The best, the greatest. So how have you been, pal?
I've been very good. Been very good. I've had my little health things.
Yeah.
It's I'm past 50.
So am
Yeah.
I.
I don't think we need to go any
No,
farther into
just
it
a
than
little
that.
bit past 50.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
I
sure.
told I was got my hair cut today just for you,
Oh, thanks so much, mate.
and
Appreciate
uh, and the gal who was cutting my hair, I said when I told her, I said, I'm not a kid, and she started to laugh.
it.
I thought I might cry.
Well, youth, what it's a glorious thing. And what's that phrase? I'm always talking to my dad about this. Um, but it's deserting my mind. It's something, oh yeah, old age is a privilege denied to many.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the golden part of the golden age, though.
Well,
Anytime
from,
it
from,
can start in
from
anytime.
from a literary point of view, I would argue that you're already there, mate, because not only did within the last year you complete the Mike Hammer Legacy project on which we've worked together for many years very happily. Yeah, you, myself, Vivian and Nick, Titan, the whole
Very
shebang.
proud of that. Very,
Yeah,
very proud
I'm
of
very
that.
and I'm very proud of it too. Not only have you had some top-notch Heller books continuing the pantheon of Nathan Heller, but you're just in the midst of having a great success that we have spent a long time planning for, and you spent a long time creating. And I want to get into how it came together, what it feels like, and what it is you've actually delivered. Because what you delivered is um, the sequel to Dashiell Hammett's classic Maltese Falcon, Max Allan Collins, The Return of the Maltese Falcon, available now in all good bookstores and online.
Well, few people would argue against the thesis that Hammett's The Maltese Falcon is the greatest private eye novel ever written, possibly certainly the greatest tough mystery ever written. And so naturally, I thought, well, sure, I should just try to write the sequel. What's more done? I have to tell you, we mentioned Barb, and she said to me when I finished it, feeling really good about the book, she said, "Well, you better brace yourself." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She says, "Not everybody's going to be happy that you did this." And it's interesting because this is the first book I can think of I ever wrote where I got bad reviews before I'd started to write it.
Yeah.
So it is presumptuous of me, in a sense. But the thing is, as you know, I've been keeping an eye on its status where public domain is concerned.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
my thinking was, well, twofold. One, wouldn't it be great to write a Sam Spade story? What could be more fun? I mean, I got to write my camera. I like to. How about getting? Sam Spade is really in my opinion, where it starts. And even more important is that somebody, because it was public domain, somebody's going to try to do this.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'd like to, I'd like to try to do it right. I'd like to try to do it from the right place. Somebody that respects and loves Hammett's work and really loves that book. And the joy of writing it was crawling inside of it, because I had to read it and read it and read it and mark it up like it's a textbook, and of course I came out. I went in thinking it was great, and I came out thinking, "Oh, The Great Gatsby, that's nothing. This book rules." Guy was great, and if you go back and look at his earlier work, like the pulp stories, they're good. But the idea that he was able to work so hard and develop to that level of excellence, which he maintained into the book The Glass Key that followed it,
Yeah,
and really The Thin Man too. I mean, think of that as a creation, The Thin Man. It was a great privilege to be able to do this, and I'm so grateful to you guys and gals at Titan and Hard Case Crime for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, mate, well, it was a privilege all the way along. I mean, I remember the first time you talked to me about this concept. I don't even remember when this was, Max, but
No,
it was actually 10 years ago, and you and I had just been on stage doing a retrospective of your career at San Diego Comic-Con. And we were having a drink afterwards, and we were just talking around about things it would be great to do, and we were mapping out. You were mapping out a lot of where you wanted to go with the Hammer series, and where you possibly saw it ending. And I was responding very enthusiastically to all that. And I know you know all of this stuff, but one of the things you then took you dropped it down. Well, of course, in 10 years' time, the Maltese Falcon goes into the public domain. And I think we were both highly exercised about, and I know this is very true for Vivian and Nick as well, Titans owners, highly exercised about the opportunity to do it right, and for it not to fall victim to one of the prolific crime continuation machines who are out there naming no names. But there are a couple of highly remunerated authors who are in the business of, basically writing with a pool of writers and keeping various dynastic properties alive. Well, you know who I'm talking about, mate.
I kind of do, and I also had no desire to see somebody write Sam Spade versus Dracula.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Because when these characters come into the public domain, that's one of the first things they do is they start mixing and matching them. And,
bring them into the present day or whatever, all of that.
Well, and Hammett is really tricky because, Mickey Spillane writes in that incredible first-person style that's just like it's flowing out of the corner of Mike Hammer's mouth while the cigarette's in the other corner. Yeah. It's very visceral, and you can get into it as just the music of it.
The fever dream of Hammer, if you will.
It absolutely is a fever dream, and I love that part of him. I mean, I love the way a lot of his books start with something just crazy. The woman jumps in front of the car and throws her arms out, and he has to slam the brakes on. That's the famous beginning of Kiss Me Deadly. Yeah. Hammett, however, it's really interesting because he had done first person basically up to then. He had this character, the Continental Op, who worked for a Pinkerton type agency, and he had done all these short stories about this character. And then the two novels, Red Harvest and Dane Curse, they're quite good and they're quite wonderful, but they're not the Maltese Falcon, and nobody thinks they are. They were first person. He takes Spade, and he never lets you into Sam Spade's mind. Now, that's to this day unusual for a mystery story. Really, for any novel to say, we're going to have the protagonist, this is going to be the central character, we're never going to give you his point of view, we're never going to tell you what he's thinking, what he's feeling, and you've got to draw your conclusions based upon how he behaves and what he says. And you can't necessarily trust what he says because he's not necessarily trustworthy. So he becomes the central mystery of the Maltese Falcon is Sam Spade, not the Falcon, not the whereabouts of the Falcon. What is making him tick? And at the very end of the book, he somewhat reveals himself. But again, through what he does and what he says. So I've always thought that was the most difficult and satisfying approach I'd ever seen anybody attempt. And he does it in the next book, The Glass Key. But he only does it about Spade in that novel and in a handful of short stories that he did. So I didn't think just any writer could pull that off, and I have enough confidence that I thought I could do it. And I have to give my editor, my other editor, Charles Ardai,
The great Charles Ardai.
because he edited me. He gave me a really thorough edit, a little too thorough as far as I'm concerned. But he caught maybe half a dozen places where I kind of told too much about what I gave indications about what Sam Spade was thinking, and that had to come out. That absolutely had to come out. I wanted to maintain not his Hammett's style as much, because I'm going to write my style to some degree,
Yeah.
but his approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I do feel very good about it continuing into this novel, and I think I don't think everybody's going to write. If anybody else writes about Sam Spade, I don't think they're going to do it that way. They may not occur to them to do it that way.
Max, talk a bit about your immersion into the original, because I thought this was fascinating when you did it.
Well, I did. One of the things that I had to do this time was because I've always been interested in it, and the famous mystery writer Donald D. Westlake, who also wrote as Richard Stark, the most famous thing there is he did the original novel for Point Blank, the great
The Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah, John Borman film starring Lee Marvin. He and I shared an interest in Dashiell Hammett. And we talked about the fact that we both had followed the film version of the Maltese Falcon, the 41 film version, followed the dialogue in the book. I don't know whether he told me or I told him, but we kind of laughed because we both had done that, because Huston famously didn't so much as do a screenplay as have a secretary set up the dialogue, and it got greenlit before he'd even written the actual script. They confused the Hammett, all the dialogue Hammett did is well, that's a script, and they greenlit it at Warner Brothers. So that was how much I was into it, and he introduced me to the 1931 movie, which is not quite as faithful, but is more faithful than it's given credit for, and has several scenes that are not in the movie because it was a pre-code movie, the 31, right. And so Spade could sleep with Bridget O'Shaughnessy, and then he could also make her strip to search her, and that wasn't in Huston. He had to drop those. They didn't even think about doing those scenes in 1941, and so I'm thinking about this all these years, and it also impacted my Nathan Heller novels, because when I was teaching at a community college the first couple of years after I got out of the University of Iowa, where I was in the writer's workshop, and I was doing a class on mystery fiction, and one of the books I was going to teach was The Maltese Falcon, of course. And as I was reading it as a teacher, the first thing I did was glanced at the indicia page, and it said, copyright 1929. And this thought went through my mind, oh, that means Sam Spade and Al Capone were contemporaries. And from that came Nathan Heller. The idea that Nathan Heller could be in an historical novel behaving like a noir private eye. And he could, he could meet Dillinger, and he could meet Huey Long, and he could meet Amelia Earhart, and all these characters. And that is what I consider to be that's my signature work is Nathan Heller. Yeah, wow. Because I wanted to bring something new or mine. It's not necessarily new. Chinatown had already been done. But I wanted to do something that was significantly mine. Because the three writers that I really, really, really connected with were Hammett, Chandler, and Spillane. And the non-private eye writer I connected with was James M. Cain of Postal Noise Rings Twice and Double Indemnity. And I got to write Philip Marlowe because I did the lead story in the collection, the Philip Marlowe 100 anniversary collection.
I
So
remember this. Yeah, I remember.
and now
I've got it.
so I got to do I got to I don't know. See, I'm a
Well,
kid.
yeah. I mean,
I'm
you've got the top level triumvirate, right? The trinity of private
well,
detectives.
and this is not
It's
to say there aren't other great private eye writers. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
and
it's Marlowe,
popular. I
Spade,
mean,
and Hammer are the archetypes, aren't they?
yeah, because if you go even when you go down to Ross MacDonald, he's basically doing Marlowe essentially. He's certainly doing Chandler.
Yes.
And you look at somebody like Robert B. Parker, and he's kind of doing McDonald, and Sarah Paretsky is doing a female detective that grows out of all those male detectives, and but it begins, you know, Chandler, well, excuse me, Hammett is the 30s, 20s, 30s guy. You know, Chandler's is the 30s, 40s guy, and Spillane is the 40s, 50s guy, and that's where all of the private eye stuff flows from in popular culture.
Yeah, well said, mate. So once you when you went through the book, and of course, as you just explained, you were very keen to kind of assimilate Hammett's style. Yeah. And that was it was important you did that while keeping your own, but keeping, like I said, his viewpoint. Yeah. Well,
Well,
how long did it take you to get that?
well that came pretty easily because I knew how important it was to do that. You see, they always say an objective style because you're not getting anything from Spade. But it's really very subjective in terms of the narration that's around Spade and around the other characters. So it's a limited omniscience, and so it's omniscient, but he doesn't ever go into Spade. See, so that's you have to understand that and grasp that, or you're not going to know where the story needs to come from. Um, what I try to do to be faithful to him, to Hammett, was this decision to have the book start a week or two after the first book ends. Okay. I kind of crawled inside the book and I only used characters that he had either, and everybody survives from the first book except Caspar Gutman, the famous fat man played by Sidney Greenstreet in the film. Everybody else is still alive. A couple of them are in prison or in jail, but they're alive. So I could bring everybody back. There was a character that didn't make it into the John Huston movie, who's in the book that I used. There were characters mentioned who never appeared, on screen or in the book, and I tried to use them as much as possible. So I was not really inventing anything. I was utilizing what was already there. And then the thing I think I realized I had to do was, because it's a period novel. I mean, Hammett was writing a contemporary novel. So, but I'm writing a period novel. So he doesn't have to take him through the time machine. I have to take the reader through the time machine. So I wanted to look at San Francisco in the late 20s and early 30s and try to take Spade sometimes to places he mentions but never really goes to, and restaurants that maybe he goes into and we don't hear anything about what they look like in there. But I did much more of that kind of place description than he did because I felt that was necessary for a modern reader. That was my take anyway.
Yeah, so interesting, mate. So fascinating to hear you talk about, and the beauty of it, I think, is that the book has turned out to it's turned out to be such a fantastic piece of work. And I don't just say that as your pal,
Thank you.
because I didn't edit this one. Charles edited this one with you.
Am I in the weeds too much here to say I actually submitted it to Titan, not to Charles, because
So
I already had a contract to do one of my QUARRY novels with Charles. And uh, the hard case crime line is a very limited kind of boutique label that does maybe 4 books a year. So I didn't feel I could do another book for Charles, and we had just stopped doing the Mike Hammer books.
Right on.
So I went to Titan with it. But I believe it was Nick and Viv who said this belongs with hard case crime, and they sent it over there.
And they were right. It is a perfect home for it. Yeah, and again, this might be somewhat in the weeds, but Charles rather gallantly said, "Well, once I've done my pass, Sumner, if you want to do a pass, be my
Yeah,
guest."
he did say that.
And I took my pass, which was I read what you and Charles had agreed together, and I went through it. And I remember I rang you up and I said on the day, and it took me like half a day to just hack through the manuscript. And then I was like, "Mate, there's absolutely no point in me doing a pass. This is perfect."
I had just gone through a fairly brutal edit with Charles Ardai, who usually leaves my stuff alone. He's learned that I'm cranky when I get edited to over edited. But he also knew that he was on the chopping block with me. I mean, he was going to be. I'm writing a sequel to the greatest private eye novel ever written, but he's publishing
right
that
on.
sequel.
Yeah.
So both of us would get. If this had bombed, we would both, we would both be damaged goods for the rest of our careers. So it was risky. And my wife said, she said, you better be ready to, and there've been a few naysayers, but I've been shocked by just how good the reviews have been.
Well, this is what I was going to say. I mean, the glorious outcome for both you and to Charles for backing it and grabbing hold of it, and ushering it in with you, but mainly for yourself. It's been just such an overwhelmingly positive response. Not only must you have been blown away, but I bet you were surprised to a degree by. I mean, I think the book absolutely deserves it, but I bet you've been surprised by the overwhelming positivity of the response. And from loads of those Hammett naysayers, all the ones I've read love the book. Yeah, and I can think of a few very key examples of people who are like, "Oh man, this dude's never going to like it," and they love it.
Yeah, a couple of the people who had said you shouldn't be doing this did come around and say they like the book very much. It's fascinating to see the different points of view because you have a lot of people responding to it. So I'm seeing here and there people saying you've got to reread the first book before you read the second book. That's not really true. If you're familiar with the 1941 movie in particular, you're not going to have any trouble with the book. And I love one of the things that has been incredibly gratifying to me is how many readers have come to me and said one of two things. I bought your book. I'm going to read it after I reread the Maltese Falcon. I love hearing that. The other one is I read your book. Now I've got to read the Maltese Falcon. I don't know how a sequel could ask for more. And then a lot of people are revisiting the 1941 movie.
Oh yeah,
interesting.
I mean,
I was not allowed to. When we set out to do this, I was told, nothing from the 1941 movie can go in this book because it is not in the public domain.
Yeah, right on.
So he can't look like Bogart. She can't look like Mary Astor. He can't look like Sidney Greenstreet. He can't look like Peter Lorre. The set, you can't use the sets. You can't describe the sets and all this stuff. And you can't look at the 1931 movie either. And you can't look at the 3 short stories that Hammett wrote about Spade. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's me and the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And
Spade, the blonde Satan, right? That's what you have to do.
Look, the blonde Satan, is that an objective narrator who describes the character as a blonde Satan?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a wonderful line I really love where he, I think it's whether it's Bridget O'Shaughnessy, one of the women's eyes is described as like pale prayers, this is a subjective writer
Yeah,
with an objective narrator,
yeah.
or I mean,
Hey, mate.
protagonist.
I think that's very well said, Max. Very well said.
And the one thing I'll say for myself, I've never noticed anybody even mention that. They
Yeah,
always just say, "Oh, Hammett's incredibly objective." Well, this is a guy who, to my knowledge, other than those two novels, Thin Man is first person, Red Harvest is first person, The Dane Curse is first person. The vast majority of all of his Continental out short stories and novellas are first
yeah,
person. But this was where, and an interesting thing about Hammett, we were talking about editing, when he delivered, you got to remember, he was this pulp writer that somehow managed to sell a book to Knopf, who were like the literary house. Okay? And so they edited him fairly heavily on Red Harvest, and they edited him fairly heavily on The Dane Curse. These are the first two books. The Dane Curse, by the way, is where almost all Ross Macdonald books come from. So when he delivers the Maltese Falcon to them, he said, essentially, guys, lay off the editing on this one. I'm very proud of this one as it is. And they didn't touch it much. There was some. But he refined it because it was originally published as a serial in Black Mask. And he kept working. He didn't just collect it. He kept working on it. It was very much he carved it like the Falcon was carved.
yeah. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, beautiful way of putting it. It is such a treat. I mean, it is an absolute triumph, and I say that objectively, despite having been involved in the project from day one. I say that objectively. I read it, and the first thing I did after I read the final manuscript was went back and read the Maltese Falcon again. I did exactly what those guys you're referencing did, because I just
Isn't
felt
it
the
pretty
juice
good?
of it all. I felt the juice of it all. It's great. It's an absolute triumph, Max. And I think for you to be pulling it out of the hat at this stage in your career, having achieved so much, but to bring out something so vibrant that so completely honors the history of hardboiled PI fiction, that's an amazing achievement, mate.
Well, it's not a period on the end of my sentence just yet. I
I
got more
wasn't putting
tricks
it
up my
that way.
sleeve.
There's definitely a semicolon there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
I have had a very blessed career, and I have the luxury of whatever time I have left doing things I want to do. I had to spend about 15 years supplementing my income by doing the movie novelizations.
yeah, right on.
And that doesn't do a lot for your reputation as a writer,
Yeah,
except the secret of it is because I always insisted on putting my name on those books because my agent always said, you should hide behind a pseudonym. I'm like, I kind of want my name on Saving Private Ryan.
yeah,
I kind
right
of want
on.
my name
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Air Force One. And you know who read those books in those years? Because it's pre VCRs. Young people,
Yes, correct. Yeah.
adolescents, teenagers, and when you get them when they're that age, and this is Mickey Spillane told me this, when you get them at that age, you got them the rest of their lives and yours.
Quite right too, mate. Very, very well said. And mate, I mean, I know. I gave you an example that what you and I talked about recently. Somebody who's written an amazing non-fiction book that we publish. The British film writer Jay Glennie, who's written the beautiful, extreme large format coffee table book, The
Um,
Making of Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
I
a
love that
favorite
book.
film of both of ours. I mean, I know you're a fan of his work, and of course, Jay is a huge fan of your work. So
That nice.
I mean, it was great to be able to connect you guys based upon that, mutual love. I always love it when you meet a very talented person who's a fan of another very talented person that you are also a fan of. There's
Well,
that's a great vibe.
I'm out there in search of finding some movie book that's any good that doesn't say Titan on the spine.
Yeah,
I'm not
you'll
having much
you'll
luck.
struggle to find it, mate, because as you know, the pantheon of Titan movie books is there's some amazing stuff there. Jay's great, and there's another guy we do a lot of stuff with, John Walsh. He really super delivers as well. He did that
Well,
great Making the Third Man book, if you
I know
remember.
I've mentioned my wife Barb a lot, and of course she and I do
Quite
the
right too, mate.
antiques. We do the antiques series, the
Yeah.
Trash and Treasures mysteries. Uh, I haven't seen her eyes light up like she did when we opened the package that had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in it, and she saw the size of that book, and she sat down with that book. And if you're a fan of that, I want to pitch not my book, but I want to pitch that book. If you're a fan of that movie and you don't own this book, what's wrong with you?
Right on, mate.
What's
Absolutely
wrong with
right.
you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, if you're a fan of the movie, you have to own it. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I mean, definitive is not a word I use about non-fiction making of stuff very often, but this truly is definitive. It's really
Yeah.
everything and the kitchen sink, and a heavy, heavy Tarantino process, a heavy Tarantino presence throughout.
It's hard to read in bed though.
Oh, it really is, yeah, because you can't fall asleep with it on you, you choke to death.
You could smother to death and be yet
That's
another
absolutely right.
fatality.
That now, mate. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece of work, and we devoted most of this conversation to another truly wonderful piece of work, The Return of the Maltese Falcon. But let's before we leave each other, Max, what's happening in the world of Quarry?
Well, we'll probably talk again about this because in November we have a Quarry novel coming out
Yes.
called Quarries. This is an exception because I actually have two hard case crime books, but one is January and one is right at the end of the year. That was the way. It's basically next year's book is being
Well, that's
published.
because that's because The Return of the Maltese Falcon is such a triumph. You have to let
Well,
it breathe, mate.
yeah, and it kind of came out of left field. Nobody but me was, and you, I think, to some degree, were expecting it. But Quarry's reunion will be out in November, and it is, I think, the 19th Quarry novel. And Quarry was first published in 1976. Now, I created him around 72 when I was at the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, but the book didn't get sold till 1976. So that marks the beginning, and this is 2026. And I'm not incredibly good at math, but I'm pretty sure that means the Quarry's reunion is the 50th anniversary Quarry novel. And I can't even believe it because it began as four books I did for Berkeley Books in the mid 70s, and it was a busted series. And I loved the character, and I thought I'd never get to write him about him again. Um, Largely thanks to Titan and Charles Ardai with a book called The
The great
Last
Charles
Quarry.
Ardai back again. Yeah,
Yeah, the Last Quarry.
the last
Uh,
quarry,
Gave him a
which turned out to be anything but.
well, you've heard this story before, but just
Yeah.
briefly, we were standing in a buffet line at a BoucherCon, the big mystery convention, and we'd had an unexpected success with Last Quarry, which I basically did to put a cherry on top of the sundae. I didn't think it was anything but a minor book, and we got excellent sales and reviews, probably the best reviews I've had prior to Return of the Maltese Falcon. And he turned to me in line. We probably each had a plate in our hands, waiting to dish the salad bar stuff up. And he said, it's too bad you wrote the last Quarry. And I said, well, why don't I write the first Quarry? And so I backed the character up and wrote about all those years I didn't get to write about him between, 1976. I did write one in the 80s. And I wrote some short stories, and there was a short film. Then it became a movie, The Last Lullaby, which is a pretty good. Tom Sizemore
Yeah.
played,
Oh, yeah. The great Tom Sizemore.
and I love writing these. And one of the things I got to fill in the blanks in his career, and then when I kind of ran through that, in the last few I've done. Now this may be alarming to some people, but I've been writing about Quarry, who is now a retired hitman, right? This is the third old Quarry book where he's my age, basically. Um, Let me tell you, it's not that easy to be a tough guy at my age.
Of course.
But Quarry does manage to do the shocking thing now and then, despite his age. So And he goes home in Quarry's return. But we should talk about that closer to when he makes his return.
We absolutely will, Max. We will have a wonderful conversation when the fall of 2026 is upon us to talk about Quarry's reunion. Absolutely, mate. And I very much look forward to that.
Well, I hope I see you in person before then.
You absolutely will, 100%. There can be no doubt. And I very much look forward to it, mate.
Andrew, it's always great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Return of the Maltese Falcon, which we've been talking about at length, can be ordered from the links attached to this conversation. It's available in the USA. And I really, really look forward to soaking up more of these terrific responses, mate.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Great to see you, pal. You take care of
Great to see
yourself.
you.
And I'll see you sooner rather than later. All right, mate.
Absolutely.
Love to all. Love you, mate. Take care.
Love you back.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.